Liz Cheney just lost her bid to become reelected once again in Wyoming. Her reelection campaign to be elected failed miserably. She lost in double-digit points, Charles, all because she went against Donald Trump and she supported Donald Trump being prosecuted and blamed him for the January 6 riots in D.C. She says he was primarily responsible and should be held accountable. And when she said that, she signed and sealed her own political suicide, because now the Republican Party has rejected her because she rejected Donald Trump. And it's unfortunate that now she's even more delusional, in my opinion. I guess she's talking to someone, listening to those who's given her such bad advice. She's thinking now she possibly may want to run on the Republican ticket to try to become the Republican nominee in 2024 to become president, because she has amassed such a large war chest of money that she has there sitting there now that she could use for a presidential bid. I think it's a joke. There's no way in hell she would ever win the Republican nomination, and she can't even win the Republican nomination in her own state for re-election to Congress.
I would agree that her political career is over, but I would argue that Liz Cheney has already won. She's been in Congress for 6 years, and she went from having a personal net worth of $7 million to $44 million in 6 years while working for us, allegedly. Her husband works for a law firm that happens to be the law firm that is representing Hunter Biden in his investigation for tax fraud and illegal purchase of a firearm. We have this net, this interwoven connection of politicians and aristocrats who feel like they are entitled to control of America. And what scares so many people about Donald Trump is it's a populist movement. It's people that are fed up and frustrated. And I don't say this as someone that is on Team Trump or likes Donald Trump or thinks that Donald Trump needs to be president again. I am not a fan of his. I am, however, a fan because I think he misrepresents his positions and he just facilitates narcissism and greed. But I am a fan of a populist takeover of America and grabbing it back. And he has been a catalyst for that, right? We are tired as American citizens of politics as usual. We are tired of looking at people who have just been in control. We're tired of generations of political control.
But that's not why the people like Donald Trump.
That is exactly why people are frustrated.
Let me tell you why the people like Donald Trump.
Okay.
And I don't support Donald Trump. I never voted for him, and I don't believe I ever will in life, unless he has a real epiphany spiritually and becomes someone who truly would stand with God and uplift God before the American people. Because I don't think the man's a godless man at all. Okay. I don't think he has God in him at all. He has his own interests at heart. But here's what I do believe also about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the only president in my lifetime that I can remember, no matter how outlandish, how crazy he promised things to his constituents, he did his best to fulfill them when he became president. Most politicians lie to the American people and make promises, and when they're elected, they don't try to fulfill any of those promises. Donald Trump, as crazy as he is, he tried to fulfill every promise. The American people are fascinated by that man because, one, he rejected corporate money to run for president. He said, I want no corporate dollars. I'll take the money from the mass of the American people, the hard-working men and women, the middle-class working women and men, and take their donations. I'll run for president. He did it, and so he rejected corporate money. Another reason why they like Donald Trump, because he was strong on America's enemies with America's foreign policy. He put Kim in check in North Korea. He put Vladimir Putin on notice, my button is as big as yours, and called Kim in North Korea the communist fool, little rocket man. Then he told Iran, I'll knock you off the map. So they like him because at least he means what he says and says what he means. Most of us who are intelligent people disagree with what he's saying, but they like the man because the man speaks that which many Americans are afraid to say or can't say, and he says it from the highest office in this country.
You know, I will applaud you for having a willingness to acknowledge some of the successes of the Trump administration. Most people in the media and most people that consider themselves on the left, which I don't know if you do or not, are unwilling to do that. I will say Donald Trump not only kept some of his promises to the constituents that supported him, but he kept some promises to all Americans, and he broke some promises to all Americans. One thing that he did that no president before him is he had a tremendous success with actual criminal justice reform in America by reducing the sentences for people that were held in federal prison on purely drug charges. He let scores of people, almost all of them African American, free that had been unjustly punished for laws that actually were spearheaded by Joe Biden during his super predator war on crime days. However, I do think there was a lot of self-dealing. I think there was a lot of corporate money that went to Trump, and I think you become a billionaire by being an awful person, by being a narcissist. I don't think he's what's best for America. I do, however, think that American people rising up in demanding that we take back Washington is very important. And I think that's why that both parties have such a vested interest in dividing us, right?
You can never take back Washington without a civil war.
See, I disagree. I don't think violence is necessary. And I'll never have an advocate.
No, listen to me. Okay. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, the American government has been hijacked by real corporate money.
Okay.
And corporate money are the powers that be that determines national and foreign policy that is not in the best interest of the common man and woman in America. And if the American people want their country back, their government, you cannot have a Liz Cheney going to Congress worth 3 or 4 million, and in 6 years she's worth 40-something million. It's not just her. Look at the financial role of all of the congressmen and women when they first were elected into Congress, and 3 years later, look at how much they were worth. They have used the election off the backs of the mass of the people to become millionaires. It's not just small groups. Money is at the root of the destruction of the American government. It's been hijacked from the American people. And if you think that the Civil War in 1800s was based off of slavery, baby. That war was based off of taxation without representation, and they felt it was tyranny, and they felt that they were being overtaxed for the free labor they had in the South. So the Civil War and Abe Lincoln and the boys, they went to war with the South, the North against the South, solely based on taxation and money. That's what's happening right now. You cannot take this country back without these aristocrats and aliquots making the American people fight like hell with their own blood, sweat, and tears to become free from it. America fought for its own independence in the Boston Tea Party for the same reason. Money is what started that war. And I'm telling you, you'll never get this country back if you don't get rid of the rich, super rich, who are controlling 5% of America's population, controlling 95% of its wealth. Until they're gone and out of politics without that power, you'll never get it back without a civil war.
Well, I agree with some of the things you said, and I'll disagree with others. I think the Civil War was very much about abolition, right? I think there are a great number, hundreds of thousands of Americans, white Americans, black Americans, fought to the death to try to free the slaves. And I think it's a mischaracterization, but that's not really the focus of what we're talking about now. I would agree with you that money is controlling the discourse, and it was facilitated by the United States Supreme Court saying, oh no, corporations are people. But that was just another facilitation. And that's what we're experiencing right now. When we are holding up Liz Cheney as some sort of martyr, right? She is only a congressman until the end of the year because of who her father is. And who her father is a man that weaseled his way into a position of vice president and then started a war in Iraq that was unneeded and unnecessary, killing countless Middle Eastern people, children, women, families, spending billions of dollars, killing scores of American GIs, and funneling billions to his company,
but
Halliburton.
That's what the rich
do. It was
do.
all about greed,
but
right?
That's what the rich do.
But here's
Remember,
the thing.
My teacher taught me America has a history of super rich white men starting wars, and poor black, brown, and poor whites have to go and fight those wars. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan said that until the super rich get out of the government, they will continue to start wars that poor people got to go and fight all races of the poor. Now, we talk about abolitionists was at the root of the Civil War. That's a lie. Because Abraham Lincoln didn't call for freeing the slaves until he could not defeat the South. And he said the way to do it, based on his advisors, was free the slaves and tell the slaves who joined the North and fight against the South that they would win their freedom. It had nothing to do with abolitionists. That was only brought into existence when they needed black slaves who were already living in the South to help them defeat the South. And remember what Abe Lincoln said about black people. he said that we are pained by their very presence. And that if I had my way, I would send them all back to Africa, and that no white man should ever be seen as an equal to a Negro, and no nigger should be seen as an equal to a white man. He said that no black man or woman should ever serve on a jury or ever be allowed to be a school teacher. And Abraham Lincoln also said that if he could get rid of us all, he would do it in a heartbeat, because we were a painful presence to America. He wasn't no friend of black people.
I would agree that there are some very problematic things that Abraham Lincoln said that have been ignored by history, but there were also a great number of Americans from the very outset who in the North refused to accept slavery as a construct. And of course, slavery is something that's existed throughout the world through the history of time, and it's a disgusting institution. It was horrifying, but there are a great number of people who gave their lives trying to end slavery and ultimately successfully ending it. But what we're talking about is Liz Cheney, and more recently, her father spearheading a war that has cost us. We don't have a baseline of health care for Americans because of our wars in the Middle East. We don't have free junior college. We don't have free in-state university. We have a government that really does nothing for the participatory people that carry all the water. Right now, the Biden administration, well, they're going to increase 87,000 new IRS agents. They say they're going after the rich, but they rejected that amendment. They're going after the middle class who pay for everything in this country and get nothing in return. And we don't, because the powers that be, whether it be the Republican Party that Liz Cheney wishes still existed, right? She wants a Republican Party that is not controlled by a populist movement. It has nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with people wanting a government that's responsive to them. And she wants the old school, the aristocracy, the Clintons and the Bushes controlling everything.
To buy smoke and mirrors. The American people must not strain at a net while they swallow a camel at the same time. Brothers and sisters, let me say this to the American people. You don't think it's strange that they hold hearings because of what happened on January 6th, but yet they will not hold hearings on George Bush Jr. sending tens of thousands of American men and women to lose their lives in Iraq on the basis of weapons of mass destruction, and that was an absolute lie with fake intelligence, and now they had to come out and admit it. Where the hearings about that? Where the hearings about what happened in Benghazi when we left those soldiers to die defending the American embassy?
How about Afghanistan?
And we left them there, and then we did nothing to save them and ignored them while they were dying and begging for help. Where are the hearings? Where are the hearings when we went to Afghanistan, like you said, and then after 20 years we decided to get out, and all of the Afghan men and women who helped us and worked with us, we abandoned them and left them there? Where are the hearings for that? There are no hearings, man.
Well,
because there were hearings, what happens in America.
But we did not abandon all of them. We abandoned a lot of them. The Biden administration actually just issued a memorandum this week trying to reframe our abandonment of Afghanistan. But the truth is we should have never been there. We don't need to play world police. What we need to do is start doing more for American citizens, right? Our government does nothing for the overwhelming majority of us, and we need to demand better. And Liz Cheney is just an aspect of the past.
We told the American people a great lie, that we were going for regime change in Afghanistan, that the Taliban was so awful, so wicked, so violent.
Well, they are awful, wicked, and violent.
But they were so violent toward women, and they hated women. And they hated education.
They do.
And then they turn right around 20 years later and say, we just cut a real good, sweet deal with the Taliban to put them back in power and we out of here. And everything the American government told us that the Taliban was 20 years ago, they're still that to this day. I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, your country must be taken back by us, for us, because the elected officials we have down there now don't have the kahunas to tell the people the truth about what's really going on.
I don't disagree. So last night on television, Quanell, we discussed the results of a University of Texas at Tyler and Dallas Morning News poll that found more that the majority of Americans support, or the majority of Texans support complete legalization for medicinal and recreational purposes of marijuana, and that 70-something% support legalization for medicinal purposes. It's an overwhelming clarion call to change the law. We've discussed the Brittany Griner situation, and the reality is, had she flown into Intercontinental Airport with that much in oil-based products, she would have been charged with a felony and looking at years and years in prison as well. And a lot of Texans, because of the partial decriminalization in some cities, are under the misimpression that oil-based products like vape pens and edibles are not being prosecuted. They're not only still being prosecuted, they're being prosecuted as a felony. I have said for years, as a policeman, when you deal with someone that is high on marijuana, they are not difficult to deal with. If it's driving, they're driving too slow. If you go to their house and bang on the door, it's because they're playing their music too loud. Half the time they show up with a bong in their hand. I didn't arrest people for drugs, so I just said, hey man, put the bong up, turn the music down. But you never had to deal with them beating their wives. You never had to deal with them passing out the wheel and killing an entire family. And it's not a poison like alcohol is. Before we started filming during the break, we were discussing going to the gym. I will tell you, I lost 70 pounds in the last year, and a lot of it was me exercising and changing my diet, but I also stopped drinking cold beer. I won't break the law, but I'll drink Delta 8 products like Wonder Water.
Were you smoking any good weed?
No, I'm not smoking weed. It's not legal yet. If it does become legal, I definitely will.
Charles,
but I will tell you.
Charles, you don't like good weed.
I just don't like breaking the law. But here's the thing.
Breaking the law, smoking good weed in your own house, that's not illegal.
Marijuana
Possession
is so much better
in the public
for you
is illegal,
than
not
alcohol.
Not a doobie squad in your own home.
There are drink-based beverages. Delta 8 is still legal, despite Governor Abbott trying to make it illegal.
Stay away from alcohol.
It's not alcohol. That's the whole thing. Like, you've got a Wonder Water from this local brewery, Eighth Wonder, 0 calories. It's a Delta 8 cannabinoid. It's what helped me lose so much weight because I do like my cold beer.
But more
importantly, the war on drugs has been a vehicle for oppression.
I support marijuana.
Well, that's not what you said.
Legal.
You said
no,
you support medicinal marijuana.
I support marijuana being legal for medical purposes. I'm very suspicious about marijuana being legal for recreational purposes because I'm waiting to see what the medical numbers are of how many men and women may have their lungs severely affected by using marijuana like people smoke cigarettes. That information is still not been brought back to the American people yet, but my concern is the abuse of marijuana. Marijuana helps those with migraines. It helps those who are suffering cancer. It helps those who are epileptic, who suffer seizures. There are so many great purposes for marijuana, how it can be used. Even former and current NFL athletes are fighting to have marijuana legalized in the NFL because it does so much to help them recover from injuries. And also, you're right, I've never seen anyone on marijuana abuse their wife or beat somebody up because they're high on marijuana. That does not exist. I remember when I was in junior high school and high school, we used to go to Mr. Tish's class, the metal shop teacher, and we would go in there, a couple of buddies, the Bubble Twins and I, and Maxie and the boys, we would go in Mr. Tish's class and we would light it up. And he was a white teacher, and he was so afraid of us because we was so wild. We told him we'd beat him up if we tried to go tell somebody. He would tell us, just leave me alone. Y'all go in the back of the class. And we would light up and we would smoke up to where the fire alarm went off. But I'm gonna say this to you. It was only when friends of mine started mixing marijuana with other things is where I saw the devastation associated with marijuana. My own mother used marijuana so much it became a gateway drug to cocaine and crack and other drugs. My concern is, are we going to legalize drugs to where it only now becomes a gateway for the people to start seeking an alternative that gets them extremely higher? Because one thing about marijuana, your tolerance levels adjust quickly. And so what happens when those who are accustomed to smoking marijuana getting super high from what's coming from Mexico, that's not real marijuana anymore, there's so many chemicals added to it. What happens when our thirst to get high in this nation supersedes common sense?
We've actually seen the converse in states like Colorado where they've legalized marijuana products. You've actually seen a drop in the use of other products like synthetic heroines, fentanyl, anything, other mechanisms to get high. And that's part of the problem with throwing marijuana in with all other drugs is it does, well, if I'm going to break this law, I might as well break that law. And it's insane. You talk about smoking marijuana, but if you go to these states where it's legalized, because I will use marijuana products when I go to Colorado or California.
So you've been getting high?
Well, I don't break the law.
I knew you was getting
Okay.
high. I knew you was smoking some good weed.
But here's the thing, you don't have to smoke it anymore. You can buy drinks, which I prefer the beverages. You've got edibles. You've got all these other mechanisms for consuming THC. And in fact, when you look at the drinks, many of them are 0 calories, and they give you still get to hold the can like the beer. But I am a fan of individual liberty, and I understand that many drugs can create very, very harmful consequences. There are things that always need to be illegal, like methamphetamine and fentanyl. But at some point, we need to return to the concept of individual liberty, and sometimes individual liberty causes harm with regulation. I don't think kids should be smoking marijuana. What a horrifying story about y'all smoking in a classroom and threatening a teacher.
Well, that wasn't horrifying.
It's horrifying. It shouldn't happen to any teacher.
We had some enjoyable moments.
It shouldn't happen to any teacher and anybody. And there are some studies that say that the use of marijuana at a young age does have impacts on motivation and other things.
Yes, it does.
And we all know people that smoke too much who could have been much more successful had they not, right? But I know people that actually regulate a lot of mental health issues illegally with the use of marijuana.
So how do we find the balance when it comes to marijuana?
Well, right now we just
there must
need
be
to,
a balance.
we need to legalize marijuana because it doesn't even address the issues.
But I think we should
from
legalize
the law enforcement.
We should legalize it on a medical usage.
And I disagree.
Not recreational.
I disagree.
And if we're going to allow it to become recreational, we definitely should make the age a responsible age for young people to buy it. Because it's going to get into the hands of a lot of young people too. And young people, I believe, will not perform as well as they could perform if they're using marijuana in class like we were doing. I believe that a lot of young people, like you were saying, they're young, their lungs are still developing, they're physically developing. And what happens when you're putting that hot smoke down your mouth, into your throat, into your chest cavity, and into your lungs? What's the long-term effects of that? I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I think that we should legalize it for medical purposes, but I want more scientific data before we just say do it for recreational purposes.
And I have to disagree. The war on drugs, especially the war on marijuana, is responsible for the existence of the cartels that are ravaging. I don't know if you saw the news last week. We had all kind of murder at the border in 3 locations simultaneously. And now they are more focused on crystallized methamphetamine, cocaine, and human trafficking. But what provided the baseline of power for these cartels was our appetite. No, it was our appetite for marijuana and our prohibition of marijuana. No, marijuana was the first.
Cocaine is what did that.
Well, we should probably legalize cocaine too.
What?
And we should put people in hospitals and not prisons and allow that tax
legalize cocaine?
Yeah, exactly. We should.
So you're going to legalize smoking crack?
I don't. Once again, if you tell people that you have to use an illegal substance, you're buying stuff that's
you're going to legalize smoking crack?
Cocaine is addictive and destroys lives. But the war on drugs.
Now, you're a former cop, right?
Right. And I've never done it. And
how many crackheads you seen?
Okay. But here's the
thing. How many crackheads you arrested?
How many lives have you seen destroyed
by crack?
By just a small amount of cocaine in their pocket?
No,
right?
brother. Listen to me. I agree with you.
Lives are overwhelmingly
that the criminal laws,
people of color.
The criminal laws were fashioned when it comes to cocaine and other controlled substances to punish poor people. But we must never legalize crack in America, crack cocaine. What the crack cocaine epidemic did to the black community, we're still suffering from the regimen and effects of that right now.
I agree that addiction is a horrible thing. And if people get addicted, we should put them in a hospital, not a prison.
To come.
And if we legalize and allow the government to tax it and control it and use that money to push people into hospitals, not prisons. Because you know what happens when you go to prison? You know what happens when you go to prison for drugs? You become a monster because it's unsafe and you're ravaged in there. Nobody needs to be in prison for a personal use amount of narcotics of any type.
I totally agree.
Period.
I totally agree with you.
It doesn't sound like you agree.
No,
it has been used as a vehicle to oppress black men.
I totally agree that nobody should go to jail for small amounts of cocaine. At least they should be given treatment and given therapy, but not given prison, because prison doesn't help anybody become clean like that. And I agree with you on that one too. It should be expunged for such small amounts. They should prosecute real drug dealers at a higher level, not the small people who are addicted to the drug. But I do not agree that crack cocaine should ever be legalized in America. In fact, American America has to pay for her involvement in allowing cocaine to come into this country to ravage the black community, because crack cocaine was not invented by us, but it was sent directly to us with an agenda to destroy the black community.
So you keep focusing on crack cocaine, but the reality is crack cocaine is taking cocaine and using a bunch of other substances to change it. Dangerous substances, crystallized methamphetamine. It's an amphetamine that they're making out of more and more harmful drugs. In fact, our homeless population has had markedly more aggressive and violent behavior, and it's a lot of it's tied to this new crystallized methamphetamine. If you could go get Adderall, why would people take methamphetamine? If you go get some sort of clean, non-diluted, non-cut form of any type of drug, whether it's cocaine or anything else,
you know what's
why
crazy?
On earth would you go get crack cocaine?
There's not a thirst for Adderall on the streets like that, though, like methamphetamine, because Adderall is mainly taken by suburban rich kids and taken by professionals who want the benefits of Adderall. But Adderall, but the appetite for Adderall does not match the appetite for methamphetamines.
Our war on, first of all, there's been a war on drugs for many, many years. Drugs won, okay? And it's created, the war on drugs has created far more violent crime, cartels, gangs, big drug dealers, violent drug dealers.
To me, there was never a war on drugs.
Themselves.
There was a war on black men in the name of drugs.
So why are you arguing for
drugs.
continuing that war on black men?
No, I'm arguing that crack cocaine and cocaine should never be legalized like that. No, I disagree with that.
We need to have an America that focuses more on individual freedoms for all people. And the persons that are going to benefit most from more individual freedoms are largely black men of color who have been oppressed by it. The only people that should be in prisons are people that are violent and victimize other people. The only people our police should be worried about are people that are violent and victimize other people. Felony arrest for drugs is low-lying fruit. You pull people over, you search people, and you search people that you don't think can complain. And overwhelmingly, those numbers are poor people and people of color.
I totally agree.
And if we end the war on drugs and we refocus our war on drugs on fentanyl and methamphetamine, crystallized methamphetamine, and leave everybody else alone, and stop treating citizens when you pull them over for a traffic stop like they're criminals because they might have some drugs in their pocket.
I agree.
In the war on drugs now, return liberty to America, or start liberty in America for the first damn time, and have some more free people and lock up the damn real criminals.
Charles, I lived through the crack cocaine explosion.
Okay, so did I.
Charles, I watched it destroy my mother.
It does, and I wish she'd have been put in a hospital.
Charles, I watched it destroy the members of my community to the bone.
I agree. I watched it as a policeman too.
I lost so many homeboys, and I lost so many friends and partners I grew up with because of the crack cocaine drug trade. Charles,
which was a function of the drug war.
I lost my little brother from dudes who went into his home to rob him, hoping to get drugs, crack cocaine, and murdered him and the other 3 young people in the house with him because of what crack cocaine had done to the community. And I'm telling you that something such as demonic as that should never be legalized in America.
You know, first of all, I'm very sorry about your brother. It's a horrible story and it's horrifying, but I would posit that that occurred as a function of the drug war and the crime that created in response. Think about prohibition of alcohol. Think about when the mob was most powerful in America.
And I disagree. Alcohol should never been legalized.
And all the violence in Chicago, all the violence in New York, all the violence that swept this country because people were told they couldn't have a cold beer again.
But I don't believe alcohol should have been legalized.
Okay, and I disagree.
Because alcohol has destroyed more homes and destroyed more marriages.
What about individual
and caused
freedom?
more children to be abused in this nation.
I don't disagree.
Than any other drug in American history.
I agree.
Alcohol has sent more American men, women, children, and babies to the graveyard than any other substance in America. So I am not an advocate for alcohol. I'm a firm believer that alcohol is all about making money and tax dollars and people getting rich who own the alcohol distribution plants and dispensaries, but man, no. Alcohol is worse than crack cocaine.
When Prohibition happened, violent crime skyrocketed across America. At the end of the day, what we need to start treating as individual adults, and I'm talking about adults only like they're adults, and let them make adult choices. And if those choices lead them to commit a crime, punish them for that. If it leads to them being in the streets addicted, put them in a hospital. If it leads them to neglecting their children, take those children and punish them for child endangerment. But at some point, we need to tell individual Americans, hey, we're going to worry about not just liberty from oppression from police. We're talking about economic liberty. We're talking about all kinds of forms of liberty to let Americans make good or bad choices
Charles,
for
can
themselves.
you imagine the life of the quality of life of children being raised by parents using these type of drugs?
So we're going to control everybody's movement?
That's not what I'm saying.
I want individual liberty. Adult people can make bad choices, and if they don't parent their kids, take their kids.
I would never want to see a child being raised by a parent using legalized cocaine, legalized methamphetamines, legalized opioids, etc. No. Because many of these parents would destroy those poor children's lives overnight.
We have destroyed so many lives by putting fathers in prison and making them unemployable, creating
because of the racist drug laws. Because of the racist drug laws.
There's a lot of white people that have had their lives destroyed too.
But not like black people and black men.
Okay.
Those laws were designed
for everyone.
They were designed to lock up black men.
Why to reduce it to race instead? Why don't we fix it for everyone?
Because for every one white man who went to jail in the drug war, hell, 9 black men went to jail.
Okay, actually, the numbers aren't like that, but they're pretty
stark. Of course they are like that.
And
Look
the
at
per
your prison
capita
systems.
numbers are horrifying, and I agree with you. But I'm sitting here saying, in the war on drugs, get police out of searching people's cars and hassling people. That would improve the relationship between black America and law enforcement, and return police to policing victimizers and the violent, and that's it.
But we don't end the war on drugs by legalizing all drugs.
Absolutely, you do. You're absolutely
not by
wrong.
legalizing all drugs. That's a Band-Aid on cancer. It's not the answer, man.